A fighter goes down. The radio crackles once. Then, nothing. From that moment on, the war does not pause. It accelerates. A pilot is hurt, hiding, moving, or already being hunted. Somewhere in the air, a rescue clock starts ticking, and the United States Air Force has built an entire kill chain around beating that clock before the enemy does. Most people think combat search and rescue is just a helicopter flying in and pulling somebody out. That's not what it is. It's a layered, brutally coordinated operation built around authentication, command and control, escort, refueling, survivor protection, and one ugly truth: the rescue force can become the next target in seconds. That's why the Air Force doesn't send one aircraft. It sends a system. The Survivor, the Beacon, the Rescue Mission Commander, the Sandy Escorts, the HH-60W Jolly Green II, the HC-130J Combat King II, the Pararescue Men, the backup plans behind the backup plans. And right now, this mission matters more than ever. The A-10 retirement fight has reopened the question nobody in the Air Force can dodge forever. When a pilot goes down in enemy territory, who runs the rescue chain after Sandy is gone? Tonight, we break down how the Sandy kill chain actually works, why it's one of the most difficult missions in military aviation, and why replacing it is a hell of a lot harder than swapping one airplane for another. The rescue mission does not begin when the helicopter launches. It begins the second the aircraft is lost. In a real combat scenario, the first problem is not extraction, it's awareness. Did the crew eject? Did the jet crash intact or break apart? Did the pilot land near friendly forces, in an open desert, in mountains, in a city, or right inside an enemy air defense belt? Is the survivor conscious, moving, compromised, captured? The first picture is always incomplete. It comes from radar tracks, wingmen, battle managers, data link hits, emergency beacons, and whatever the survivor can transmit without giving away position. This is where a lot of Hollywood versions get it wrong. A downed pilot does not just key a radio and start talking freely. Radios and locator systems help, but every transmission can be intercepted. Batteries are finite. The survivor may be wounded. Enemy troops may be moving toward the crash site. So the isolated airman works inside an evasion plan and uses communications carefully. The Air Force and rescue community call that isolated person the ISOP, the isolated personnel. And before anyone commits the most vulnerable rescue assets, the force has to answer a terrifying question. Is that really our person? Because the enemy can hear the same distress call. The enemy can find the same wreckage. In the worst case, the enemy can use captured gear, mimic a voice, or bait rescue aircraft into a kill zone. So the first real link in the kill chain is authentication. That means challenge and response checks. It means matching the survivor against pre-filed personal data from the ISOP rep, the Isolated Personnel Report. It means code words, personal details, route logic, and behavioral cues that tell the rescue force this is not a trap. That sounds bureaucratic until you understand the stakes. The pickup phase is the most exposed moment of the entire mission. If an HH-60W descends into the wrong spot, the rescue crew, the pararescue men, and the survivor can all die together. So, before the helicopters dive into the threat ring, the rescue force has to build certainty from fragments. And it has to do it fast. Because the enemy is building a picture too. The longer the delay, the worse the geometry becomes. Search parties spread, roads get blocked, manpads teams move, local police or militia start looking up, surface-to-air threats reposition. What began as one downed pilot can become a theater-wide race. This is the first brutal truth of CSAR. Finding the survivor is hard. Confirming the survivor is harder. And doing both under fire is what separates a real rescue force from a collection of aircraft with good intentions. Once the survivor is located and authenticated well enough to move the rescue force forward, the next problem is control. not firepower. Control. Somebody has to own the battle space around that survivor. Somebody has to coordinate rescue aircraft, suppress threats, sequence the helicopters, talk to the isolated airmen, and keep the whole thing from collapsing into chaos. In the Air Force rescue world, that job traditionally belongs to Sandy. The call sign itself goes all the way back to Vietnam. It began with A-1 Sky Raiders flying rescue escort, passed through the A-7, and then settled into the A-10 community, where it stayed because the Warthog fit the mission frighteningly well. Low enough to see, tough enough to take hits, slow enough to search, armed enough to make people back off. In a classic 4-ship Sandy formation, the jobs are not interchangeable decorations. Sandy 1 is usually the rescue mission commander and the on-scene commander. That aircraft runs the fight. Sandy 2 backs up the lead and helps maintain coverage. Sandy 3 and Sandy 4 protect the HH-60s during ingress, pickup, and egress. That structure matters because rescue missions are never just air-to-ground strikes with a different name. This is not a bomb run. This is not routine close air support. The entire mission is survivor-centric. The rescue force is not trying to destroy everything in a sector. It's trying to carve out a temporary corridor of survivability around one human being. That demands a weird mix of talents. The Sandy lead has to think like a mission commander, a forward air controller, a tactician, and sometimes a bodyguard. He's coordinating airspace, threat calls, authentication, timing, helicopter routing, and contingencies while staying ahead of the rescue package. And this is exactly why the A-10 retirement has the CSAR community nervous. The Air Force has said discussions are still ongoing about who takes over the Sandy mission once the Warthog is gone. That's a real problem, because replacing Sandy is not just about finding another aircraft that can carry weapons. It's about replacing a training culture built around low-altitude visual search, escort discipline, rescue command, and trust between communities that have worked together for decades. A lot of people here just use the F-35 and think the issue is solved. It's not solved. Even pilots inside the debate have made the same point. The hard part is not only the platform, it's the mission set. Sandy's not something you inherit automatically because your jet is newer. That's why the Air Force Times reporting on the post-A-10 rescue gap matters. The service has not publicly shown a mature, formal replacement pipeline for the Sandy 1 role. And if you lose the commander in the air who knows how to run the pickup under pressure, the rest of the chain gets much more dangerous, no matter how advanced the replacement cockpit looks. This is the second brutal truth of CSAR. The rescue helicopter may be the most visible part of the mission, but without Sandy, the rescue package is flying into a knife fight half blind. Once Sandy has shaped the fight enough to move rescue forces forward, the mission shifts from locating and controlling to reaching. This is where the two specialized platforms at the heart of modern Air Force personnel recovery come in: the HH-60W Jolly Green II and the HC-130J Combat King II. The HH-60W is the pickup machine. It's the aircraft that gets pararescue men and recovery gear to the survivor and gets the survivor back out. Built from the Black Hawk family, the Whiskey was designed specifically for combat rescue. Lockheed Martin says it doubles the internal fuel capacity over the older HH-60G configuration without relying on space-hungry auxiliary tanks. It also adds improved armor, externally mounted weapons, defensive systems, and an integrated mission system meant to reduce crew workload. That matters because rescue helicopters live in the worst part of the fight. They fly low. They fly slow. They fly close to obstacles, wires, rooftops, ridgelines, and small arms fire. They have to get near the survivor, hold steady long enough to hoist, land, or load, and then claw their way back out while everyone on the ground suddenly understands exactly what they're trying to do. The crew knows this. They train for it constantly. And when they go in, they're not just ferrying bodies. They are carrying the pararescue men, special mission aviators, med gear, hoists, guns, and the last clean chance the survivor may get. Now, add the second aircraft. The HC-130J Combat King II is the Air Force's only dedicated fixed-wing personnel recovery platform. That line matters. Only dedicated. The aircraft is not a nice-to-have support player. It's central to extending the rescue package. Lockheed lists its range at beyond 4,000 miles, with the tactical profile and endurance needed to support austere recovery operations. In practical terms, that means the HC-130J helps keep the helicopters alive in the air long enough to matter. It can refuel rescue helicopters, move crews and equipment, and provide the fixed-wing backbone for a mission set that otherwise runs out of fuel, distance, and time very quickly. And that's the part casual coverage misses. The helicopter doesn't just need permission to enter the fight, it needs legs. In a large theater, especially over desert or maritime distances, the rescue force may have to cover far more ground than a straight line on the map suggests. It may search, it may wave off, it may reposition, it may have to hold while authentication firms up or enemy forces move through the pickup zone. Without a fixed-wing recovery platform backing the mission, the package becomes much more brittle. The most cinematic part of the mission is usually the least forgiving. Everything has to work right when the helicopter enters the kill box, because once the pickup starts, everyone knows where the prize is. If this whole kill chain sounds specialized, that's because it is. And that's why the current debate over the Sandy mission matters so much. The Air Force plans to retire the A-10 by fiscal year 2029. The service has also suggested that some experienced A-10 pilots may transition to aircraft like the F-35A. But those are not the same thing as proving the Sandy mission has a replacement. What the post-Iran reporting exposed was not just that the Air Force can still run a rescue under fire, it exposed how dependent that mission remains on a very specific community. The A-10's strengths in this role are not abstract. The aircraft can loiter, it can visually search, it can take punishment, it can operate low enough and slow enough to stay meaningfully tied to the survivor and the helicopters. Just as important, the pilots who carry the Sandy call sign are trained for the rescue command function itself. That means the real replacement problem has two layers. First, what airframe best protects and commands the rescue force in a modern threat environment? Second, how does the Air Force rebuild decades of mission culture, tactics, and crew trust in a different cockpit before the old one disappears? Those are not minor questions. They are doctrinal questions. The service may ultimately decide that the answer is a distributed model, maybe with fifth-generation fighters handling parts of the escort problem, maybe with different command relationships, maybe with more off-board sensors and unmanned support. That may happen. It may even be the right answer for a high-end fight. But the burden of proof is on the replacement concept, not on the mission that already exists. Because when a pilot goes down, nobody gets credit for a future slide deck. They need a rescue force that works now. And that is the real takeaway. The Sandy kill chain is not old-fashioned. It's one of the clearest examples in military aviation of why specialized mission design still matters. Every link in the chain exists because someone learned the hard way what happens when it does not. A downed pilot is not just a personnel problem. It's a time-critical tactical problem, an intelligence problem, a morale problem, and a strategic problem all at once. That is why the Air Force sends an entire rescue architecture into the fight. Not because it's cheap, not because it's easy, because if you want pilots to keep flying in danger, they have to believe the rescue chain behind them is real. And for now, when that chain moves, it still carries one old Vietnam call sign at the center of it: Sandy. If you want more military aviation breakdowns that cut through the fluff, subscribe and stay with us, because the future of combat rescue is going to become a much bigger story over the next few years, and most people still don't understand how high the stakes really are.